Open the door of nearly any refrigerator in this country, and you will find them standing in the shelf of the door, 3 or 4 or 5 bottles of salad dressing, ranch and Italian and vinaigrette, and the rest, each one bought for $3 or $4, each one half full and slowly going off. And inside those bottles is mostly cheap oil and water and vinegar, thickened and colored and flavored and preserved with a long list of things sold dear. I am going to show you today how to make your own salad dressings from scratch, fresher, finer, and cheaper than anything in a bottle, in the time it takes to find the bottle in the refrigerator, out of oil and vinegar, and a few things from your own kitchen. And the reason this little kitchen skill has faded, like so many, is that there is steady money in selling a man a bottle of mostly oil and water for $4 again and again, when his own kitchen would make him something better for pennies. Here is the truth about salad dressing that the bottle in the door would rather not dwell on. A dressing is one of the simplest things a kitchen makes. At its heart, it is just fat and acid, oil, and something sour, brought together with a little salt and flavor. That is the whole of a vinaigrette. Oil, vinegar, or lemon, salt, and whatever herbs or seasonings you like, shaken together. A creamy dressing is hardly harder. A base of something rich and tangy, thinned and seasoned. People dressed their greens this simple way for as long as there have been greens to dress, long before there was a bottle, mixing it fresh at the table. The bottle has merely taken that ancient penny-cheap mixture, thickened and preserved it for the shelf, branded it, and sold it back to folks who have forgotten that the oil and vinegar in their own cupboard would make a fresher, better dressing in a minute for a fraction of the cost. My name is Amos Miller. I am Amish, and I farm here in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, and a fresh dressing made in the kitchen has always graced our table, for the garden gives us greens through the season, and a good dressing is what turns a bowl of leaves into something folks reach for. We do not buy our dressing in bottles. We whisk it fresh from oil and vinegar and the herbs from the garden, the way it has always been done. It is one of the easiest of all the things a kitchen can make for itself instead of buying, and one that most surprises people when they learn how simple it is. I am going to give you the whole of it today so that shelf in your refrigerator door need never hold a store bottle again. I am going to show you the basic vinaigrette and the proportion that makes it right, the creamy dressings, and a dozen ways to flavor them, all from cheap kitchen things. I am going to be honest about the keeping of them and a small safety matter, as I always am. And there is one thing, one little trick, that is the difference between a dressing that comes together smooth and creamy and clings to your greens and one that sits in two sad, separated layers of oil and water. And almost everyone who fails at homemade dressing fails for want of this one thing. Stay for that part especially, because it is the whole secret of a dressing that holds. Here is what you need, and it costs almost nothing. You need an oil, any good cooking oil or olive oil you have. You need an acid, vinegar of any kind, or lemon juice. You need salt and pepper, and from there, whatever you like, a bit of mustard, honey, or a little sugar, garlic, herbs from the garden, and for creamy dressing, something rich and tangy as a base. And you need a jar with a lid to shake it in, or a bowl and a whisk or fork, oil, vinegar or lemon, salt, and a few flavorings in a jar or a bowl. That is the whole of it, and the makings of dozens of dressings sit in your kitchen already. Now here is that one little trick, the secret of a dressing that holds together instead of separating, so listen close, because it is the thing that defeats most people. Oil and vinegar do not naturally mix. Pour them together, and they sit in two layers, the oil on top, the water below, and no amount of stirring keeps them joined for long. They drift apart again in moments. To make them join into one smooth, creamy dressing that clings to your greens, you need what is called an emulsion. The oil broken into tiny droplets and held suspended in the vinegar. And to hold that emulsion, you need an emulsifier, something that binds the fat and the water and keeps them from separating. And the humble secret is this: a little mustard is a fine emulsifier, and so is a spoonful of honey or an egg yolk or a bit of a creamy base. So when you make your vinaigrette, whisk a little mustard into the vinegar and salt first, and then drizzle in the oil slowly while you whisk hard, and the mustard will hold the oil in tiny droplets, and your dressing will come together thick, smooth, and creamy, and stay that way. That is the whole secret. Without it, your dressing separates. With a little mustard and a slow whisk, it holds beautifully. Almost everyone who says they cannot make dressing simply never learned that one thing. So here is how you make a basic vinaigrette. The old proportion is about 3 parts oil to 1 part vinegar or lemon. But you adjust it to your taste, more vinegar for sharper, more oil for milder. Into a bowl or a jar, put your vinegar, a good pinch of salt, some pepper, and a small spoon of mustard. Whisk or shake that together. Then add the oil. If whisking, drizzle it in slowly while you whisk hard to build the emulsion. If shaking in a jar, just add it and shake vigorously. Taste and adjust. More salt, a touch of honey to balance the sharpness, a little garlic, some chopped herbs, and there is your dressing. Fresh, bright, creamy, clinging to the greens, made in a minute. Shake or whisk it again if it separates as it sits, and it comes right back. Now, the creamy dressings, which are nearly as easy. For a creamy dressing, you start with a rich, tangy base, soured milk or cream, a soft, fresh cheese, yogurt if you have it or the like, and you thin it and season it. A simple, creamy herb dressing is that tangy base, thinned with a little milk or vinegar, with salt, pepper, garlic, and a good handful of chopped fresh herbs, dill, parsley, chives, whatever the garden gives. A buttermilk-style dressing is soured milk seasoned the same way. The rich base does the work of the oil, the sour does the work of the vinegar, and the herbs and garlic flavor it. Whisk it smooth, taste, adjust, and you have a creamy dressing finer than any bottle, made from what your kitchen or your cow gives. Now, I must be honest about the keeping and a small safety matter, as I always am. A simple oil and vinegar vinaigrette keeps a good while in a cool place or the refrigerator. The acid helps preserve it, and you simply shake it up again before using. But the creamy dressings, made with milk or cream or egg, are perishable like the dairy and egg they are made from. So keep those cold in the refrigerator and use them up within a few days, and do not leave them sitting out warm. If you use raw egg yolk as an emulsifier in a dressing, mind that it is raw egg. Keep it cold, use it soon, and do not give a raw egg dressing to the very young, the very old, or the unwell who should avoid raw egg. A mustard or honey emulsifier avoids that question entirely. And as with any food, if a dressing smells off or the dairy is turned, discard it. Vinaigrettes keep well. Creamy and egg dressings keep cold and briefly. Keep to that, and your dressings are safe and good. Now let me give you the deeper part, the endless flavors, because once you have the base, you can make any dressing you fancy. Change the oil, change the vinegar, a wine vinegar, a cider vinegar, a lemon, and you change the whole character. Add a spoon of honey or maple for a sweet dressing lovely on bitter greens or fruit. Add crushed garlic or grated onion for a sharp, savory one. Stir in mustard for a tangy mustard vinaigrette. Fold in great handfuls of fresh garden herbs, basil, dill, tarragon, chives, parsley for a green herb dressing. Add a little of your own jam or fruit, mashed, for a fruit vinaigrette. A poppy seed dressing, a creamy ranch style with herbs and garlic, a sweet and sour, a simple lemon and oil. All of them are just the one simple base, varied. You are not stuck with the few flavors the store sells in bottles. You can make exactly the dressing your meal and your family want, fresh each time. And the same base makes a marinade for meat, a sauce for vegetables, a dip. One little skill that feeds a dozen needs. Let me give you the troubleshooting. If your dressing separated into oil and water, you had no emulsifier or did not whisk hard enough. Whisk in a little mustard and drizzle the oil in slowly, and it will hold. And a vinaigrette that separates as it sits just wants a shake before serving, which is normal. If it tasted too sharp and sour, add more oil or a touch of honey to balance the acid. If it tasted flat and oily, it wants more vinegar or lemon and more salt. If a creamy dressing was too thick, thin it with a little milk or vinegar. Too thin, add more of the rich base. If it tasted of nothing, it needs salt above all. Salt is what wakes a dressing up. And then more herbs and seasoning. Nearly every trouble is the emulsion, the balance of oil to acid or too little salt, and all three are easily set right by taste. Let me say a word more about the thrift and the freshness because both are real. Reckon the cost. A bottle of dressing runs $3 or $4 and is mostly cheap oil and water. The oil and vinegar to make far more and better dressing at home cost a fraction of that, and you very likely have them already. A family that whisks its own dressing spends almost nothing and is never caught with a shelf of half-empty bottles slowly spoiling. And beyond the money, the homemade is simply better, brighter, fresher, made to your own taste, full of real herbs and no long list of thickeners and preservatives, and made fresh the day you eat it rather than sitting in a bottle for months. It is the same story as the mustard and the pickles and so much else. The homemade is cheaper and better both, and the only thing the bottle truly sells is the convenience and the forgetting that you could make it yourself. Let me tell you more about the oils and the vinegars, because they are the body and soul of a dressing, and knowing them lets you make any flavor you please. The oil gives the richness and the smooth mouthfeel. A mild oil makes a gentle dressing that lets the herbs and vinegar shine, while a robust olive oil makes a dressing with character of its own. Choose mild when you want the seasonings forward, bold when you want the oil itself to taste. The vinegar gives the brightness and the tang, and each kind brings its own note. A cider vinegar is fruity and round, a wine vinegar sharp and clean, a plain white vinegar simple and bright, and lemon juice in place of vinegar gives a fresh, lively sourness. By pairing this oil with that vinegar, you can make a dozen different dressings from the same simple method. A light lemon and mild oil for tender greens, a bold olive and wine vinegar for sturdy ones, a cider vinaigrette for a fall salad. The bottle gives you its one fixed flavor. Your own kitchen gives you every flavor, tuned to the meal in front of you. Let me say more about balancing a dressing by taste, because this is the skill that frees you from recipes forever. A good dressing is a balance of four things: the fat, the acid, the salt, and the sweetness, with the herbs and seasonings on top. Too sharp and sour, and it wants more oil or a touch of sweetness to round it. Too flat and heavy, and it wants more acid to brighten it and more salt to wake it. too dull, and it wants salt first of all, then more herbs and seasoning. The way to learn this is simply to taste as you go, dipping a leaf or your finger, and to adjust a little at a time. A drizzle more oil, a splash more vinegar, a pinch more salt, a drop of honey, until it tastes alive and balanced on your tongue. Once your taste knows that balance, you will never need a recipe again. You will make a dressing by feel, the way you salt a soup, and it will come out right every time and suited exactly to what you are eating. That is a small freedom the bottle can never give. And let me name the freshness of the herbs especially, because it is where the homemade most outshines the bottle. A dressing made with a handful of herbs cut fresh from the garden that very hour. The dill, the chives, the basil, the parsley still smelling of the sun, has a brightness and a life that no bottle, sitting months on a shelf with its dried flecks and preservatives, can come close to. In summer, when the garden overflows with herbs, a fresh herb dressing is one of the finest and cheapest pleasures of the table, and it uses up the herbs that would otherwise go to waste. To step out the door, cut a handful of green, and whisk it straight into a dressing minutes before the meal. That is eating the way our people always have, fresh from the ground, and it costs nothing but the few steps to the garden. The bottle can never be that fresh, because the bottle was made and sealed in a factory long ago and far away. Let me add one practical word on making it ahead and in quantity, since folks find that useful. A vinaigrette is happy to be made in a larger batch and kept. Fill a jar with a good amount, shake it up, and keep it in the cool, and you have dressing ready for a week of salads, just shaken again each time before it is poured. That is as handy as any bottle and far cheaper. The creamy and egg dressings, being perishable, are better made in small amounts as you need them and used up within a few days. So keep a jar of vinaigrette always at the ready for the everyday salad, and whisk up a creamy one fresh when the meal calls for it. Between the two, you are covered for any table, and the store bottle has nothing left to offer you. Now, I want to take a moment, because this is the part that matters. Think about who profits from the shelf of dressing bottles in your refrigerator door. A salad dressing is, at its heart, cheap oil and a splash of vinegar with a little salt and flavor, one of the cheapest mixtures a kitchen can make. And yet, it is bottled and branded and sold for $3 or $4, and folks buy it again and again, a whole row of bottles, without once thinking they could whisk it themselves in a minute. And it is the same with the marinades, the dips, the sauces beside it. The whole arrangement depends on people forgetting that these bottles are mostly pennies worth of common things, that the oil and vinegar in their own cupboard would make a fresher, finer dressing for far less. There is no money in a family that whisks its own dressing from oil and vinegar and garden herbs. So a kitchen skill as old as the salad itself was let slip away and replaced by a shelf of bottles. Not because the homemade was worse, it is fresher and better, but because there is good profit in selling pennies of oil and water for dollars, a bottle at a time. So here is what I want you to do this week. The next time you make a salad, do not reach for a bottle. Put a little vinegar in a jar with salt, pepper, and a small spoon of mustard. Add 3 times as much oil and shake it hard. And taste your own fresh vinaigrette, holding together, clinging to your greens. Adjust it to your liking. Fold in some herbs from the garden and dress your salad with it. Reckon what it cost you against the bottle. Once you have made your own dressing one time, you will keep making it, and that whole shelf of bottles in the door will begin to empty out for good. Tell me in the comments below, have you made your own dressing, and what is your favorite? And what is the one bottle in your refrigerator door you would most like to learn to make yourself? I read every single one of these, and the old kitchen ways you all share are the reason I keep doing this. Next time, I am going to show you how this kitchen makes its own ketchup and a few other table sauces from scratch, fresh and cheap, so you can empty out the rest of that bottle shelf too. It is the natural next step after the dressings. Until then, remember the mustard that holds it together. Balance your oil and your acid, salt it well, and remember the people who built this country with their hands knew things we are only just starting to remember.